Have you always wanted to be a better hand knitter? Well, I know I do, and so in July of 2023, I decided to join the Knitting Guild Association and begin participating in their Master Hand Knitter Certification program. So in this video, I'll talk about my personal experience working through level 1 of the program so that you can decide whether or not it might be suitable for you. The Master Hand Knitter Certification Program is actually one of several certification programs offered by the Knitting Guild Association. So the Knitting Guild Association is the only national nonprofit organization devoted exclusively to knitting. I'll put information about the organization below. Basically, in order to participate, you have to be a member. As of January 2024, annual membership costs $35, and then of course there are additional fees for the various courses and certification programs that they administer. So when I first decided that I might want to participate in the Master Hand Knitter program, I decided to take a look at what kind of things would be expected of me. And so one of the things that the Hand Knitter program does that's really helpful is they give you an outline of basic skills that you should already have mastered, right? So if you're a new knitter, an entirely new knitter, you've just begun knitting within the first year or two, the Master Hand Knitter Certification Program might be a challenge for you. I think a lot of times, like as knitters, we just think, well, I like to knit, right? I pick up the needles and, I draw loops of yarn through other loops of yarn and I'm happy. And I would say that if that's how you approach knitting and the thing that makes you happy, then you should continue doing that. But I think you should also bear in mind that may not be, that may mean that the Master Hand Knitter Certification Program really isn't for you. And so basically what I decided to do, and this was actually for probably about 6 months, so at the start of 2023, before I, kind of dove in and joined the Knitting Guild Association and opted to participate in the Master Hand Knitter program, I told myself, you know what, I'm going to see whether over the next 6 months I'm willing to do these things, right? Willing to pay attention to my tension, willing to weave in my yarn ends the way you're supposed to, which meant I had to learn that task first, that whether I'm going to sort of pay attention to blocking, make sure that I'm blocking things correctly, right? Basically work through those 4 prerequisites on my own to see, do I enjoy doing this kind of activity in conjunction with my knitting? My primary recommendation is, for someone who's considering the Master Hand Knitter program, I would say you have to ask yourself, are you really an independent learner? Because this is very much an independent, sort of self-structured, self-guided program. Okay, so all that said, one of the things that the Knitting Guild Association does in their Master Hand Knitter program is they give you very detailed instructions about what they're looking for, what your tasks are, and they also kind of break that all down for you at the beginning in a sort of, almost like an order of tasks that they strongly recommend that you follow. Okay? And in terms of my own experience, I would say that when you first get the instructions, don't be surprised if you feel overwhelmed. So there's a huge research component to the Master Hand Knitting program. And I personally, again, did not mind that aspect of it, that I was willing to do that. I have a background in education, so like all of that kind of stuff was not something that, that was a stumbling block for me, right? Doing the writing, doing the reading, that, sort of fit with kind of my day job in general. So I would just say be aware of that kind of stuff. That said though, because I kind of broke apart the work on the swatches from the work on the research. And again, that is not something I would do, moving forward, right? If I could go back and do something over again, it would be that. It would be spending more time kind of researching even the most basic techniques and then doing the swatches. Because, on the most practical level, one thing that happened was I had done a bunch of swatches, and then while I was then kind of working on compiling the research and the resources and making sure that I had done them correctly, I put the swatches in, this big 3-inch binder that I needed. And over time, because they sat in the binder for a month or so, they ended up getting really flattened out. So I ended up having to kind of re-block swatches to make sure they hadn't flattened from just the weight of being in the binder. So that was just like a kind of small thing, but added a little additional time to the process, for me anyway. And lastly, I would say, because I spent a lot of time leaving things like the blocking reports and the actual writing of things to the last minute, by the end of the process, really felt like my brain was exhausted from all of the writing. And so that's something that I would definitely suggest moving forward, is that you kind of learn to work the knitting and the writing and the research sort of in conjunction with one another. Right? I feel like that would have made a better experience for me. Right? By the time I submitted my binder, which I did in June of 2024, so about 11 months later, I felt like I had just gotten to a point where I had to submit it, and I just had to get the feedback and kind of take it from there, because I wasn't really sure sort of, how good some of my swatches were, what specific problems I had, and I just had gotten to a point where it's like, okay, I feel like this is the best that I could do right now, and I need somebody else to give me feedback so that then I can improve. And I would say that's the most important thing to kind of keep in mind, is that, you're going to get feedback, right? And it's probably going to be critical. So what I got back from the committee of 2 people that reviewed my level 1 submission was 8 single-spaced pages of feedback. And I ended up having to resubmit quite a few of my swatches. I think probably a little over half of them. And in most cases, there were some pretty consistent issues right across all of them. And I had, I think, less of an issue with the writing and the research component of it. Although I did also, I did have to sort of add additional background resources. So there was a lot of kind of, the initial feedback that I got offered me a lot of things that I needed to pay attention to and to correct. That said, when I kind of, drilled down and did them, it did not take me that long to implement those changes. And it really was, again, a question of me moving from being a self-taught knitter, where I just knit because I like to knit, and it goes how it goes, and if I'm happy with the result, it's fine, to recognizing that there are these external standards, and I need to be kind of learning to have those as part of, kind of my own knitting process. So this brings me to the final point that I want to make, and the final question that I want to answer, which is, would I recommend the Master Hand Knitting Certification Program, and, would I do it again? And my answer to that is yes and yes.